Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something genuinely fascinating in electronic engineering, BiCMOS inverter architecture. If you've ever wondered, how hardware engineers actually manage to combine the highly efficient computing brains of MOS technology with the absolute driving muscle of bipolar technology, well, you are in the right place. We're going to break down exactly how this works, why we actually need it, and the brilliant ways engineers have had to troubleshoot the design along the way. Okay, let's dive into this. So to really get BiCMOS, we first need to start at the absolute foundation of logic functions. And the most basic, fundamental one out there, inversion. Literally just flipping a 1 to a 0 or a 0 to a 1. Now, the core philosophy behind BiCMOS is what makes it so cool. It takes a very logical approach. We use MOS switches to perform that actual logic function. They act as the brains of the whole operation, right? Making the smart, low-power decisions. But here's the thing. Logic alone just isn't enough. You need actual power to shove those signals rapidly through a complex circuit. And that is exactly where bipolar junction transistors, or BJTs, step in. They act as the brawn, doing all the heavy lifting required to aggressively drive those output loads. So how does this actually look when we put it all together? Let's talk about the specs for a simple BiMOS inverter, the classic, straightforward layout you'd see in the source literature. On paper, this is basically a dream circuit. Just look at these features. First off, we get fantastic output logic levels that sit right up tight against our rail voltages. Why? Because the saturation voltage is quite small, and the base emitter voltage is sitting right around plus 0.7 volts. Plus, the inverter boasts exceptionally high input impedance, meaning it won't drag down the stage right before it, but it pairs that with low output impedance to easily push signals forward. Toss in a massive current drive capability, all packed into a really small physical footprint on the silicon, and top it off with high noise margins to keep your signals clean. Looking at this, you're probably thinking, wow, we nailed it. Total circuit perfection. But, well, engineering is rarely ever that simple, right? With all these incredible features laid out, we've got to take a step back and ask a pretty critical question. Why shouldn't we actually just build this simple inverter? If it's so flawless, why isn't this exact design powering every single high-speed device sitting on your desk right now? Well, the answer actually comes down to two fatal flaws hiding right under the surface of that simple design. This seemingly perfect setup has a massive, deal-breaking issue when it comes to power consumption. Essentially, there's a direct DC path from the power supply, VDD, straight down to ground. And that path runs directly through two of our transistors, T3 and T1. So what actually happens? Whenever your input voltage hits logic 1, you get this massive, continuous, static current just flowing straight through that path. Imagine that happening across thousands of gates on a chip. Your hardware would literally overheat in seconds. It's basically a giant leak that completely destroys your efficiency. And if that wasn't bad enough, we have a second major flaw. There's absolutely no discharge path for the base current of either bipolar transistor when they're supposed to be turning off. So they essentially just get stuck, lagging behind and completely dragging down the speed of the entire system. So engineers obviously couldn't just throw their hands up and quit. They had to iterate. They had to engineer a fix. Let's walk through exactly how they solved this. Step 1, to kill that massive static current, we eliminate that problematic DC path completely. But you know how circuit design goes? Fixing one thing usually breaks another. By chopping out that path, our output voltage swing suddenly shrinks because the output voltage can't drop below the base 2 emitter voltage of T1 anymore. It's basically trapped there. So we move to step 2. We introduce an elegant, super simple fix. We just add resistors. By carefully wiring in specific resistors, we don't just restore and improve that voltage swing when each bipolar transistor is off, but we finally create those absolutely vital discharge paths for the base current during turnoff. So now, the transistors can actually switch off cleanly and quickly. Problem solved. Let's move forward and see how this all fits into the broader landscape of modern chip design. Now that we've got a fully fixed, highly functional BiCMOS architecture, it is time for the ultimate showdown. We really need to stack up standard, everyday CMOS technology against our newly built, finely tuned BiCMOS powerhouse. This comparison perfectly captures the harsh realities and, honestly, the essential trade-offs of engineering. Let's see how these two heavyweights stack up. Standard CMOS uses MOSFETs exclusively. Because of that, the fabrication process is remarkably simple, which keeps the cost super low, and it allows for a very high integration density. You can cram a ton of transistors onto a single chip. It also gives you extremely low static power consumption and a fantastic noise margin. But its switching speed? Just moderate. And its output drive capability is pretty low. On the flip side, we have BiCMOS. By aggressively combining both BJTs and MOSFETs, we get significantly higher switching speeds and insanely high output drive capability. It is a literal powerhouse. But you do pay a steep price for all that performance. We're talking much higher power consumption, a vastly more complex fabrication process, higher manufacturing costs, and you have to settle for a slightly lower integration density and a lower noise margin compared to pure CMOS. And this brilliantly illustrates why there's really no such thing as a single perfect technology in electronics. There is only the right tool for the right job. Because of its incredible density and ultra-low power needs, standard CMOS absolutely dominates everyday applications. Things like microprocessors, dense memory, and systems on chip where low to medium speeds are totally fine. Conversely, our BiCMOS architecture finds its permanent home exactly where its sheer brawn is an absolute requirement. We're talking about driving high-speed I/O lines and bridging the really complex gap in analog to digital interfaces. It jumps in to do the heavy lifting exactly where standard CMOS just runs out of steam. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to really think about. Hardware engineering is, at its core, all about making calculated, intelligent compromises. Knowing what you now know about the intricate balancing act between switching speed, power density, and fabrication costs, where are you going to deploy the brawn of BiCMOS in your next hardware design? Are you going to stick to the highly integrated, safe, dense world of standard CMOS? Or do you have a demanding, high-speed application that desperately needs the serious muscle of those bipolar transistors? Keep those trade-offs in mind as you head back to your own circuit designs. Thank you so much for joining me today on this explainer. Keep questioning the specs and keep innovating.